I was standing in the doorway of my own kitchen, smelling the sawdust before I even saw the contractors. My daughter, Claire, was pointing at my antique butcher block, the one I'd rolled out dough on for 30 years. "It all has to go," she said. Not to me, but to her husband, Rick. I must have made a sound, because she finally turned. She didn't look guilty. She looked annoyed. "Mom, please," she sighed, like I was the interruption. "We're trying to work. This whole 1,990 seconds farmhouse vibe is just, it's not the brand. We're demoing it for the new influencer kitchen." My kitchen, the heart of my company, demoing it. But that explosion was just the final crack in a foundation that had been crumbling for years, ever since I made the mistake of handing my daughter my legacy. Handing her my legacy. I thought I was giving her a foundation. Something solid to build on, the way you pass down cast iron pans and a good family name. I never dreamed she saw it as a teardown project. That night, my backyard was full of strangers. This was my house, the one I'd refinanced twice to keep the jam business, Blue Ridge Pantry, afloat. But it wasn't my party. Claire and Rick were holding court on the deck, the one I'd built with my own 2 hands one summer with a rented nail gun and a lot of sweat. Now it was draped in those little Edison string lights, the kind that cost a fortune and look like they belong in a precious little bistro, not a working farmhouse. Claire was wearing a white linen dress that looked like it cost more than my first month's mortgage payment. She drifted through the crowd, a glass of wine permanently attached to her hand, laughing that high, tinkling laugh she only used with new, important people. She was branding Rick. Well, Rick was in his element. He was a salesman, born and bred. He sold software, or solutions, or synergies, one of those vague, important-sounding things that let him wear monogrammed cufflinks and use words like leverage in casual conversation. Tonight, he wasn't selling software, he was selling my life. He'd even hired a catering team, who were now bustling around my kitchen, the one they planned to gut. But the main course? That was all me. "Evelyn! Perfect timing!" Rick boomed, spotting me by the door. His smile was all teeth, bright and artificial like a strip mall dentist's ad. "Would you be a doll and go grab that famous peach cobbler? The gentlemen from the venture capital fund are dying to try the original product." He winked at the men, as if we were in on a charming little secret. Be a doll. I'm 68 years old. I've run a profitable business for 30 years. I am not, nor have I ever been, a doll. But I smiled, the way you smile at a doctor right before he gives you a shot. I went inside, the knot in my stomach tightening. The cobbler was cooling on the counter, bubbling in the same Pyrex dish I'd used for every church potluck and PTA bake sale since Claire was in kindergarten. It was my recipe, my mother's really. It was the smell of my childhood, a sweet, baked-in memory of a simpler time. I brought it out, along with a stack of my good dessert plates and the antique silver spoons I'd inherited. A man in a crisp blue suit, the one who looked like his shoes cost more than my car, turned to Rick. "So, this is the woman who started it all." Rick slung a possessive arm over my shoulder, his heavy gold watch cold against my skin. "This is her. This is Claire's mom, Evelyn. The OG, right?" He laughed, squeezing my shoulder hard enough to make me wince. "She started the little hobby business we're scaling. We're taking her cute little jam recipes and turning them into a real national brand. Hobby." The word just hung there, stinging in the humid evening air. It bounced around in my head, picking up speed, gaining weight. A hobby. A hobby isn't what you do at 3 a.m., crying over a $1,000 batch of strawberry preserves that didn't set right because the humidity was off. A hobby isn't what makes you drive a 20-year-old pickup truck, the one with 200,000 miles and a permanent rattling sound, because every spare dime goes back into stainless steel vats and FDA-approved canning lines. A hobby isn't what you do while you're negotiating with the regional buyer from Whole Foods, or managing payroll for 12 employees, or staring at a spreadsheet at midnight trying to figure out shipping logistics. This hobby had paid for Claire's braces. It had paid for her college education, the one that made her think she was too good to actually get her hands sticky. This hobby had built the very deck they were standing on, board by painful board. I felt my smile freeze, brittle and thin as spun sugar. "That's right," I heard myself say, my voice sounding distant. "Just a little hobby." I wanted to leave, to go to my room and shut the door, but I was trapped. I started collecting empty glasses, playing the part they'd cast me in, the helpful, invisible old woman. The brand was all Claire and Rick. I was just the folksy backstory, the wallpaper. And because I was wallpaper, nobody noticed me when I walked past the rose bushes, my rose bushes, the ones I'd planted when my husband Frank passed to pick up a stray plate. Rick was there with the suit from the VC fund. The man was swirling his brandy, looking thoughtful. "She seems very involved," the investor said, his voice low. "For a founder who's retired. Is that a potential problem? Legacy founders can get territorial." I froze. I was hidden by the shadow of the big oak tree, the one Frank and I planted from a sapling. Rick let out a low, dismissive laugh. That laugh, the one that always made me feel like I'd tracked mud into his clean, white life. "Her? Oh God, no. Don't worry about Evelyn. She's sentimental, but she's not a problem. In fact, she was the main problem. Her old school, made-by-hand methods were a massive roadblock. They're just not scalable." My hand tightened on the glass. I could feel the sharp, etched ridges of the crystal. "We're streamlining everything," Rick continued, his voice dripping with condescension, like he was explaining something simple to a child. "New co-packers, new supply chain, new logo, the whole 9 yards. And that meant restructuring her involvement. Between you and me, she's just happy to have a place to live and putter in the garden. She'll be completely out of the picture by Q4. A roadblock, restructuring my involvement. Happy to have a place to live. In my own house. The one my name was still on the deed for. Or was it?" The glass in my hand didn't shake. I didn't gasp. It was like the sound in the world just muted. That high-pitched ringing you get when something is terribly, terribly wrong. He wasn't just insulting me. He was telling this stranger that I, the woman who built this business from a roadside stand into a regional name, was a roadblock to my own success. That I was a charity case living in my own home. That I was being restructured out of my own life. I turned around, silent as a ghost. I walked back into the kitchen, right past the caterers who were complaining about my ancient oven. I placed the empty glass on the counter. The small, sharp clink was the only sound I made. It was the only protest I had left. I looked at the kitchen they wanted to demo, at the shiny new logo proofs for Blue Ridge Pantry sitting on my antique table, a logo that looked like every other bland, minimalist brand on Instagram. They'd taken the blue out of the ridges. They hadn't just taken my business. They were erasing me. I stood there for a long time, the fake laughter from the party washing over me. Rick thought I was a roadblock. Claire thought I was a vibe that needed updating. They thought I was a silly, sentimental old woman, happy to putter in the garden. A small, cold smile touched my lips. Okay, if they wanted a silly, sentimental old woman, that's exactly what they were going to get. I went to my room, not to cry, but to think. I went to the small lockbox in my closet, the one I hadn't opened in years. I needed to remember just how much this hobby had cost me. I needed to remember the receipts. The receipts weren't in a file. They were in a cold, gray metal lockbox tucked under a stack of my grandmother's quilts in the back of my closet. I hadn't opened it since Frank died. The key was exactly where I left it, taped under my dresser drawer. It was cool against my palm. The hinges gave a small, protesting squeak. The air that came out was musty, the smell of old paper and contained memories. On top was a picture of Frank and me at the state fair, the year we won our first blue ribbon. Under that, Frank's old Timex watch, the one he was wearing when he died. And under that, the ledgers. Not one, but 3. Old school, green cloth-bound books from Bank of America. I ran my fingers over the embossed logo. My hobby had required 3 of these. I pulled out the middle one, dated 1999. My fingers, now stiff with a touch of arthritis, fumbled with the brittle pages. I turned to the back, to the loans section, and there it was. One line, written in my own neat, anxious cursive. The 14th of September, 1999. Principal, $80,000. Purpose, capital expansion. The number was so stark. $80,000. It wasn't just a number. It was a risk that had kept me awake for a solid year. It was the sound of my own heart pounding in my ears, so loud I could barely hear the bank officer. The memory hit me so hard it was like falling. Suddenly, I wasn't in my quiet bedroom. I was 20 years younger, sitting on a hard plastic chair under flickering fluorescent lights, the air smelling of stale coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. "Evelyn, I need to be sure you understand," Mr. Henderson said. He was a decent man, but he looked at me over his glasses like I was a child asking for a loan to buy a pony. "This isn't a business loan. This is a second mortgage on your home. You default, you and Frank. You lose the house. You lose everything. All for jam." I looked at the pen he was holding out. Then I looked past him, through the glass partition, to where my daughter, Claire, was sitting. She was 15. She hadn't wanted to come. She was slouched in the chair, earbuds in, her foot tapping a rapid, angry rhythm on the floor. Furious, I'd dragged her away from her friends. She'd needed new clothes for the homecoming dance, and I'd had to say no. There was no money for dances. There was only money for pectin and sugar and a new, terrifyingly expensive pasteurizer. I turned back to Mr. Henderson. I pushed my shoulders back, the way my father taught me to do when I was scared. "It's not for jam, Walter. It's for the state fair contract. It's our first big order. This," I tapped the paper, "is the only way to meet it. It's an investment." He sighed. "It's a hell of a gamble, Ev." I picked up the pen. It was cheap, plastic, and attached to the desk by a little beaded chain. I looked over at Claire again. She was picking at her nail polish, completely oblivious to the fact that her entire future was being weighed on this Formica desk. "I know," I said, and my voice was steadier than I felt. "It'll be hers someday. This whole thing. It's for her. It's her future." I signed the paper. The sound of a beer bottle clinking against the deck railing outside snapped me back to the present. I was in my room. The $80,000 was long since paid off, paid for by that hobby, paid for by the very peaches and strawberries they were now rebranding. $80,000. I looked at the ledger, then at my hands. "Some hobby," I whispered to the empty room. I dug deeper in the box, and I found the other receipt, the one that mattered now. It was a thick sheaf of papers from last year, stapled together by a law firm I didn't recognize, the one Rick had insisted on using. "They handle all my new ventures, Mom. They're the best." The title was Business Transfer and Legacy Agreement. I'd read it, or I'd tried to. It was all heretofores and party of the first part. Rick had sat next to me, his expensive pen tapping on the table, explaining it in his smooth, patient voice. "This just protects you, Mom. It gives you lifetime tenancy in the house, a guaranteed advisory salary, and transfers the operational control of the LLC to me and Claire. It's just a formality to make the new investors happy. Lifetime tenancy, advisory salary, operational control." But now, with Rick's real words, roadblock, restructuring her involvement, happy to have a place to live, echoing in my ears, the legal jargon looked different. It looked dark. I read the lines again, my blood turning to ice water. Party of the first part, Evelyn, agrees to transfer full ownership and title of the property, in exchange for lifetime tenancy rights, revocable upon mutual agreement, or should said party require a higher level of care. They weren't demoing my kitchen, they were demoing their kitchen. They weren't restructuring my involvement, they were firing me from my own life. And that higher level of care, was that what the Q4 deadline was for? Were they planning on having me declared, what? Incompetent? They thought I was a silly old woman, a hobbyist, a roadblock. They thought I was just going to putter in the garden while they sold my life's work out from under me and then packed me off to a nursing home. I closed the lockbox. The click of the lock settling into place was sharp and final. The anger from the backyard party hadn't faded. It had found a purpose. It had found the receipts. Fine. Rick was the salesman. He was the synergy guy. But I was the one who knew how to read a balance sheet. I was the one who knew how to build something from nothing, with nothing but risk and grit. The silly old woman was about to get a new hobby, auditing. My new hobby was auditing, and every good auditor needs access to the books. The problem was, my books were now locked in their world, a world of cloud drives, encrypted keys, and administrative passwords. Rick had made sure of that when he migrated the business. I waited until the next morning. The contractors were already making a racket, pulling my beautiful cherry wood cabinets off the wall with a sickening screech of crowbars. Rick was at the dining room table, his new command center. He had his sleek silver laptop open, one of those white earbuds in his ear, and a mug of that expensive coffee that smells like burnt dirt. He was on a synergy call. I put on my oldest, saddest-looking cardigan, the one with a little fraying at the cuffs. I shuffled over, holding my credit card statement in a slightly trembling hand. I waited until he glanced up, his eyes instantly annoyed at the interruption. "Rick, dear? I'm so sorry to bother you. I know you're so busy." I started, my voice a little weaker, a little higher than usual. He pulled the earbud out with a put-upon sigh. "What's up, Evelyn? Kind of in the middle of a global strategy session here." Global strategy. He was talking to a logo designer in Ohio. I knew. I'd heard him from the hall. I held out the paper, pointing with a shaky finger. "It's just this bill. There's a charge on it, for $10 a month. It says cloud pantry storage. I think it's for the business, for the recipes. But, well," I gave him my best, most confused look. "Since you and Claire are streamlining everything, I thought maybe I should cancel it? You know, save a few pennies where we can, but I just can't figure out these new computers." I was playing the fool, and it made my stomach turn. I had to force myself to look helpless, to act like the woman he described to the investors, a sentimental old woman who was in over her head. He glanced at the statement, a smirk playing on his lips. "It's $10, Evelyn. I don't think it's going to break the bank. It's the secure cloud drive, where I keep all the operational files." "Oh, I know, dear, I know. It's just, I tried to log in, just to see, and it keeps asking for a passcode or a password. And I tried Blue Ridge, and I tried Claire's birthday. I even tried Frank 1975. I let my voice trail off, adding a little embarrassed laugh. "And now it says I'm locked out. Oh, it's all just too much for my old brain. I think I broke it." His condescension was so thick I could have bottled it and sold it as syrup. "You didn't break it, Evelyn," he said, like he was talking to a toddler who dropped her ice cream. "It's not your email. It's an encrypted business server. You can't just guess the password." This was it. I held my breath. "I know, I'm just so silly. I brought my old laptop. The one you set up for me? I thought, maybe. Could you just fix it for me? Just so the $10 stops? I'd be so grateful." I held out my old heavy laptop. It was a 5-year-old Dell, a dinosaur next to his sleek silver machine. Rick let out a sigh so loud and long it was a performance all by itself. He was annoyed, but his ego was purring. The roadblock was coming to him for help. The hobbyist couldn't handle a simple login. This was proof that he was in charge. "Fine," he snapped, grabbing the laptop from me. "Give it here. This'll take 2 seconds." I watched his hands. They were tan and smooth, with manicured nails, not the hands of someone who'd ever picked a strawberry or sterilized a mason jar. He opened the laptop, his fingers flying across the keys. "See? You're not even on the right login portal," he scoffed. He typed in a long, complex web address. A new login screen appeared, one I'd never seen. It just said, BRP admin. "What was your password again?" he asked, not looking at me. "Oh, I think it's Peaches, 123, I offered, making sure to sound unsure. He snorted. "Right? No," he typed. A long, complex password. His password. The master password. And then, out of pure, arrogant habit, the muscle memory of a man who never expects to be questioned, his finger moved to the trackpad and clicked the little box. "Keep me logged in." He didn't even know he'd done it. He clicked a few more times. "There, I unlinked your credit card from the account. We're good. The $10 will stop." He closed the laptop with a sharp thud and pushed it back across the table, a gesture of complete dismissal. He put his earbud back in. "All set, now, if you'll excuse me." He was already back in his global strategy session, his face set in that self-important frown. He'd already forgotten about me. I picked up my laptop. It felt heavier now, or maybe I was just stronger. "Thank you, dear," I said, my voice dripping with false gratitude. "You're a lifesaver. I'll go see to the garden." I shuffled away, the the very picture of the harmless old woman being put out to pasture. I went to my room. I closed the door. I sat on my bed for a long, silent minute, my hands perfectly steady. Then, I opened the laptop. I clicked on the browser. And just like that, I was in. I wasn't just in my old recipes folder. I was in his folder, the BRP admin folder. The silly, sentimental old woman now had the keys to the entire kingdom. And I had a feeling I wasn't going to like what I found in the treasury. The treasury. That's what it was. And when I opened that laptop, I realized Rick hadn't just left the key in the lock, he'd left the heavy steel door wide open. He'd been so arrogant, so sure I was a computer-illiterate old woman, that he'd logged in as the full administrator and just left it. I clicked on the My Drive icon. It wasn't my drive, it was his. For a second, I felt a pang of guilt. This felt wrong, like reading a diary. But then I remembered the words, roadblock, restructuring, happy to have a place to live. This wasn't a diary. This was my company. This was my house. I wasn't snooping. I was taking inventory. I started clicking. The first folder was labeled Marketing, Assets, New. Inside, my world had been sterilized. My logo, the one I'd hand-drawn at my kitchen table, with the 3 blue-shaded mountains and the Blue Ridge pantry in a warm, cursive script, it was gone. In its place was a file named BRP, Logo, Final, Beige, PNG. I opened it. It was nothing. It was just the letters BRP in a cold, thin font. And the color, beige. The color of unseasoned oatmeal. The color of a waiting room. They had taken my Blue Ridges, my pantry, my name, and boiled it all down to 3 beige letters. I felt a cold, quiet rage build in my chest. This wasn't streamlining. This was erasure. I went back. I found another folder. Financials, projections. I may be a hobbyist, but I know a spreadsheet. I opened the file. It was a 5-year plan. I saw my name. E. Franklin. Legacy stipend. And a number next to it. $1,200 a month. A stipend, like an allowance for a college kid. I looked at the revenue projections. They were quadrupling the price of my jams and the cost of goods sold column. I saw the name of a massive food conglomerate, a co-packer in New Jersey. They weren't just changing the logo, they were changing the product. They were planning to take my mother's peach cobbler recipe, my 30 years of sourcing from local farms, and turn it all into corn syrup-laden junk in a factory 1,000 miles away. And then slap a beige logo on it and call it artisanal. This wasn't a business plan. It was an identity theft. I clicked out, my heart pounding a sick, heavy rhythm. I saw all the folders now, all labeled in Rick's sterile corporate speak. Synergies, optimization, brand, voice. And then I saw it. It was separate from the others. Tucked at the bottom, as if it was an afterthought, or maybe just something he needed to keep separate. It wasn't a business name. It was a code. A folder named Project Takedown. My hand hovered over the trackpad. Part of me didn't want to know. Part of me wanted to close the laptop, make some tea, and pretend I'd never seen any of it. Pretend I was just the silly old woman who putters in the garden. But that woman was gone. Rick had restructured her right out of existence. I took a deep breath. The smell of sawdust and destruction wafting in from my ruined kitchen. I clicked. The folder opened. It wasn't a spreadsheet. It was a slide deck. One of those slick, corporate presentations, like the kind Rick was always practicing in front of the bathroom mirror. The cover slide was beige, of course, with the new, cold BRP logo. The title was Legacy Asset Restructure, a 3-phase plan. My blood went cold. I'm an old-school business owner, not a Silicon Valley shark, but I know corporate speak. Legacy doesn't mean to honor. It means old and in the way. And restructure means to gut. I was the legacy asset. My hand was trembling so hard I almost couldn't click to the next slide. Phase 1. Asset securitization. Complete. There was a scanned image on the slide. It was the business transfer and legacy agreement I'd signed last year. The one Rick had rushed me through, the one that was just a formality for the investors. But now, on this high-resolution scan, I could see the real document title in the header, the part his thumb had been covering. It wasn't a legacy agreement. It said, "Irrevocable quitclaim deed." I stopped breathing. I know what a quitclaim deed is. It's what you use when you want to give property away, fast and final. It's a no backsies document. I didn't sign a trust. I didn't secure my lifetime tenancy. I gave them my house. I gave them my land. I gave them 30 years of my life's work for nothing. That $1,200 stipend he mentioned, it wasn't a guarantee. It was a lie. I felt the room tilt. The sound of the hammering from my kitchen faded into a dull, distant roar. I felt stupid. I felt like the silly old woman he'd called me. I forced myself to keep clicking. Phase 2. Brand streamlining and optimization. In progress. This was the new logo, the New Jersey factory, the influencer kitchen. It was all there, mapped out. They weren't just taking my business, they were actively destroying its value to pump out cheap junk under my name, just long enough to make it look good for a quick sale. I was getting sicker by the second. And then, I got to the last slide. Phase 3. Finalize and liquidate target. Q4. The slide was split in two. On one side was a picture of my house, but it wasn't my house. It had a bright red for sale sign photoshopped onto the lawn, the kind the big national real estate chains use. And beneath it, a number that punched the air out of my lungs. EST. Asset liquidation, $1, 2M. On the other side of the slide were 3 bullet points. Just 3. Finalize asset liquidation, house and property, by Q4. Transition E. Franklin to long-term care facility. Sunset Hills consultation complete. Capital reinvestment and new venture. I read the second bullet point 3 times. Sunset Hills. I know that place. Everyone in town knows it. It's the new, beige building out on the highway, tucked behind the Costco. The one that smells like industrial floor wax and sadness. The place old people go. And never leave. Consultation complete. They had already been. They had toured the facility. They had shopped for a place to put me. This wasn't just greed. This wasn't just a daughter being disrespectful. This was a plan. A cold, sociopathic 3-phase plan to take my home, sell my life's work, dump me in a facility, and walk away with over $1 million. My daughter, Claire, my little girl. She had sat at this table with Rick. She had looked at this slide, and she had agreed. I thought back to that bank ledger in my lockbox, the $80,000 second mortgage, the fear and the hope, the promise I'd made to Mr. Henderson, my voice shaking. It'll be hers someday. This whole thing, it's for her. I guess I was right. I slowly, carefully, closed the laptop. The little click of the lid shutting was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I stood up. My knees were shaking, but my hands were not. The hot, blind panic was gone, and something else had taken its place. Something cold and hard and heavy. They hadn't just insulted a hobbyist. They hadn't just pushed aside a roadblock. They had signed a quitclaim deed. But I was the one who had just quit. I was done being a mother. I was done being sentimental. I was done puttering in the garden. I walked over to my purse and pulled out my old, cracked iPhone. I needed a lawyer, not one of their slick $10,000 suits. I needed a junkyard dog. And you don't find a junkyard dog in the yellow pages under A for attorney. You find him where the pavement ends. For me, that was the First Presbyterian Church, Tuesday night, 7 p.m., free legal aid night. I'd seen the flyer tacked to the community board at the library for years, right next to ads for guitar lessons and lost cats. I'd never paid it much attention. Tonight, it was a lifeline. I almost turned around twice. The contractors were gone by the time I left, leaving my kitchen looking like a war zone, the walls stripped down to the studs. I had to sneak out of my own house, telling Claire I was going to my evening book club. The lie felt small and sour in my mouth, but the truth was a cannonball. I couldn't fire it yet. The church basement smelled exactly like every church basement in America. Weak coffee, old hymnals, and that faint, dusty smell of cheap industrial wax. A few other people were waiting on metal folding chairs, their shoulders slumped, all of them looking just as lost as I felt. A tired-looking woman at a card table took my name on a clipboard. "Mr. Diaz will see you next." After 20 minutes of listening to the buzz of the fluorescent lights, she called Evelyn Franklin. I was led to a small, curtained-off office, really just a corner with a card table and 2 more folding chairs. The man sitting there didn't look much older than my daughter. His tie was loose, his sleeves were rolled up, and his desk was a chaotic stack of manila folders that looked like they were about to collapse. He had dark, tired eyes, but they were sharp. He didn't look at me like I was a hobbyist. He looked at me like I was a puzzle he needed to solve. "Mr. Diaz." "Just Ben is fine," he said. His voice was gravelly. "The sign says 15 minutes per person, but that coffee out there is sludge, so I'm not in a hurry. What's the problem, ma'am?" I sat down. The chair legs scraped on the linoleum. I'd brought my old iPad, the one I'd saved everything to, the one Rick didn't know existed. I had to force the words out. Saying them made them real. "I think my daughter and son-in-law are stealing my house." He didn't blink. "Okay, that's a hell of an opener. Show me." So I did. I didn't cry. I didn't get hysterical. I was cold. I was a roadblock. I was an asset. I opened the iPad. I started a business, Blue Ridge Pantry, in 1995. I built it in my home. Last year, my son-in-law, Rick, had me sign this. I showed him the file I'd saved of the legacy agreement. He put on a pair of cheap reading glasses and scrolled. He read for a long time. Then he looked up at me, his face hard. "This isn't a legacy agreement, Mrs. Franklin. This is a quitclaim deed. You signed away your property." "What was the consideration?" "Consideration. What did they pay you for it? What did you get in exchange?" "Nothing," I whispered. They promised to take care of me. They said it was just a formality for investors." Ben Diaz leaned back, and the folding chair groaned in protest. He ran a hand through his messy hair. "Jesus. Okay, so it's fraudulent inducement, but right now, it's a," he said, she said. "A judge is going to ask why you signed a legal document you didn't read." "Because he's my son-in-law," I said. "And she's my daughter." My voice cracked on that last word. The only time it did. He nodded, his face grim. "It's tough. Family cases are the worst. They'll just say you were a willing partner, or that you're getting old, confused, that you forgot." "They do think I'm old and confused," I said, my voice hardening. The crack was gone. "That's why he was so careless. He was condescending. He let me into the admin drive on my own laptop this morning to fix a problem." I tapped the screen, and I found this. He called it Project Takedown. I opened the slide deck. I watched his face. The tired, bored expression melted away. His eyes narrowed. He went from pro bono volunteer to shark. He read Phase 1, Asset Securitization, complete. He saw the scan of the quitclaim deed. He read Phase 2, Brand Streamlining. He got to the last slide, Phase 3, Finalize and Liquidate. He read the bullet point, Transition E. Franklin to Long-Term Care Facility. He read the words, Sunset Hills Consultation Complete. He was silent for a full 30 seconds. The only sound was the ancient light buzzing overhead and the distant clatter of a coffee mug. He looked up at me. The tiredness was gone. His eyes were burning. "Mrs. Franklin," he said, and his voice was low and angry. These are not just bad kids. This is textbook, premeditated, felonious elder fraud. This isn't just a civil case anymore. This is criminal." A strange, cold wave of vindication washed over me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't just a sentimental old woman. I was a victim. And I had proof. "What do we do?" I asked. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "What do we do? We let them finish. Right now, they've planned a crime. They've committed fraud on paper. But they haven't completed the final act. They haven't tried to sell the house or put you in that facility yet, have they?" "No," I said. The slide said Q4. That's 2 months from now." "Good," he smiled, and it was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a junkyard dog who'd just found the keys to the butcher shop. "So you go home. You play the part. You are the sweetest, most confused, most sentimental old hobbyist they have ever met. You are so excited about the new beige logo. You are so relieved they're handling all that complicated business stuff." I don't know if I can," I said. My kitchen, they're destroying it. It's almost gone. Let them, he said, his voice hard as steel. Let them spend the money. Let them rack up the receipts for the demo. Let them sign the contracts with that factory in New Jersey. Let them get their hands so dirty they can never, ever wash them clean. Every dollar they spend on their brand is another nail in their coffin. We need them to complete the crime. We need them to take that final, undeniable step. And then Ben Diaz said, "You call me, and we don't just file a lawsuit. We drop a bomb. We won't just get the house back, Evelyn. We're going to get everything. We're going for fraud damages. We're going for punitive damages. We are going to liquidate them." He scribbled his cell phone number on the back of his rumpled business card. "Don't call the office. Call this. And Evelyn, don't say a word. Go putter in your garden. Be a roadblock. And let me know the second they mention Sunset Hills." I walked out of that church basement. The coffee still smelled weak, but the world felt different. I was no longer an old woman who'd been tricked. I was an old woman with a junkyard dog on a leash, and I was about to go home and play the part of my life, all while my daughter and her husband built their own prison, brick by beige brick, and I was going to be the one handing them the trowel, with a smile on my face. That was the hardest part of Ben Diaz's plan. I went home from that church basement, and the next morning, I began the performance of my life. I found Claire in the dining room, which was now Command Central. The walls were covered in paint swatches, dozens of them, all beige. There was accessible beige, grage, oat milk, mushroom. I put on my best, slightly confused smile, the one I'd been practicing. I picked up one of the beige on beige swatches. "Oh, honey, it's so clean." Claire looked up from her laptop, her eyes narrowed, suspicious. She was probably waiting for me to cry about my cherry wood cabinets, which were now a pile of scrap in a dumpster out front. You like it." "Oh, sweetie, I love it." The words tasted like ash. I was just so stuck in my old ways. "You're absolutely right. It's time for a fresh start. This new BRP brand. It's just so modern." I watched her relax. The tension went out of her shoulders. She'd won. The silly old woman had finally gotten on board. "I knew you'd come around, Mom," she said, a triumphant little smile on her lips. "See, Rick? I told you she'd be excited once she saw the vision." Rick didn't even look up from his phone. "Of course she is. It's $1 million vision, Evelyn. Glad you're finally seeing it." "Oh, I am," I said. "I truly am." For the next 2 weeks, I was the most excited, most helpful, most on-board mother in the world. I made them coffee in the morning using the coffee maker I'd had to move to the laundry room, since my kitchen was gone. I told Claire how smart and streamlined the beige logo was. God forgive me, I even said the new factory-made jam samples from New Jersey tasted peppy. They lapped it up. Their egos were so enormous, their condescension so complete, that they never once questioned it. The roadblock had turned into a cheerleader. Then came the day of the brand photo shoot. They were staging the house. This apparently meant removing every single object that proved a human being had ever actually lived there. I stood by, playing the part of the helpful assistant, while Claire and a photographer in a tight black turtleneck directed 2 guys to move furniture. "Ugh, that has to go," Claire said, pointing at my antique walnut rocking chair, the one Frank bought me after she was born. "Way too granny. It's killing the vibe." "And that," she said, pointing to the wall. "What even is that?" It was my 1,999 State Fair blue ribbon, framed, the one that had cost me an $80,000 second mortgage, the one that had launched the business she was now gutting. "It's just an old ribbon, dear," I said, taking it down myself. My hands were perfectly steady. "You're right. It's just clutter." Then the photographer, the one in the turtleneck, pointed to the corner of the dining room. "Wait, this is actually kind of cool. Has a lot of character." He was pointing at my preserving table. My stomach dropped. Not that table. It wasn't a cool prop. It was my partner. It was an 8-foot slab of scarred, stained maple that Frank and I had bought at a garage sale for $10 and spent a weekend sanding down together. It was where I developed my famous spiced apple butter recipe. It was where Claire had done her homework every single day from first grade to high school graduation. It was stained purple from 1,000 spilled blackberries and had a deep, crescent-shaped knife mark from the time I'd almost chopped my own finger off trying to get a Thanksgiving rush order out the door. That table was my story. Claire didn't even look. That? God, no. It's ancient. Mom, can you please get this thing out of here? We're trying to get a clean shot of the new flooring. A thing. I looked at my table, my partner, my story. And then I looked at my daughter, who saw none of it. Of course, sweetie, I said, my voice light. Where should I put it? Claire waved her hand dismissively, already turning back to the photographer. I don't care. The garage, the burn pile, it's junk. And then she said the words that sealed her fate. Just go weed the garden or something, Mom. You're in the shot. Go weed the garden. The exact patronizing role they had assigned me, the silly old woman, puttering around, happy to have a place to live. I smiled. A bright, wide, false smile. You're right, it's just old junk. I put my hand into the pocket of my gardening apron. My fingers found my old iPhone. I pressed the voice memos app, just as Ben Diaz had taught me. I hit the red record button. The little timer started. Click. I'll get it out of your way right now, I said, my voice full of cheerful energy. I started pushing the heavy table, the legs screeching on the new floor. Goodness, this is heavy. You know, honey, it's just so wonderful seeing you two take charge like this. All this leveraging and investing, it's all so exciting. I had them. I was the doting, stupid mother, and they were the brilliant business gurus. They couldn't wait to talk about it. Rick came over, sipping a green smoothie. See, Evelyn? Told you. You just gotta trust the process. The house is the key asset. We're leveraging it to get the big buy-in from the VC fund. The voice memo was capturing every self-important word. I panted a little, putting on a show of struggling with the table. Oh, leverage. That sounds so smart. Does that mean we're all going to be rich? Rick let out that condescending laugh. I heard it with my ears, and I felt the phone in my pocket record it. It means we will be, Evelyn. It means Claire and I can finally get this brand to where it deserves to be, without, being held back by the whole country bumpkin vibe. He means, Mom, Claire chimed in, that it's our turn to make the decisions. You did great with your little hobby, but this is the big leagues. The house has to be sold to get the capital. It's just a smart business decision. You can't be sentimental about it. I stopped pushing the table. I held my breath. This was it, the moment Ben told me to wait for. Oh, I see, I said, my voice trembling just the right amount. Sell the house. Oh my. Well, what about me? Where will I, go? I looked at my daughter. My child. The one I'd signed that mortgage for. She didn't even flinch. Mom, don't be dramatic, she said, her voice sharp and annoyed. We've handled it. We found a fantastic new community for you. It's top of the line. You'll be with people your own age. You won't have to worry about a thing. Rick nodded, adding his 2 cents. It's called Sunset Hills, out by the Costco. It's perfect. They have social activities and everything. You can, play bingo. It's time for you to finally relax. Bingo. Sunset Hills. They said it. They said it right into my pocket. They stood there, surrounded by my life, the life I'd built with my own 2 hands, and they were smiling, planning my future in a beige-colored room with a bingo card. All so they could leverage my home and liquidate my legacy. I gave the old maple table one last hard shove. The screech it made on the floor was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. I stopped the recording. You're right, sweetie, I said, turning back to them, my face a perfect mask of relief. You're both so right. It really is time for me to relax. Relaxing. That's what I did. For 3 days, I was the most relaxed woman in the world. I relaxed while my kitchen was replaced with stainless steel counters so cold and sterile they looked like they belonged in a morgue. I relaxed while they painted over the warm, buttery yellow of my living room with a color called grige. I puttered in the garden, just as I was told. I weeded the rose bushes, I deadheaded the petunias, and I waited. I had the voice memo saved, backed up, and emailed to Ben Diaz with the subject line, Bingo. His reply was one word, wait. He didn't have to tell me twice. I was waiting for them to take the last step. I was waiting for them to hand me the shovel so I could let them dig their own graves. It happened on a Thursday. The house was quiet. The contractors were gone. The staging was complete. My home was no longer a home. It was a beige, hollow, echo-filled showroom for a life I'd never lived. Every family photo, every worn quilt, every bit of me had been packed into boxes and stacked in the garage, right next to my poor, exiled maple table. Claire found me in the laundry room, my new kitchen, rinsing out my coffee mug in the utility sink. "Mom," she said. Her voice had that fake, bright, talking to a child tone. "Can you come into the dining room? Rick and I have something wonderful to show you." My heart didn't pound. It just settled. A heavy, cold stone in my chest. The wait was over. I followed her. Rick was already seated at the new glass and chrome dining table. It was set for a board meeting. He had a folder in front of him. They both looked pleased. They looked like two cats who had finally cornered the mouse. I sat down in one of the new, hard-backed chairs. It was deeply uncomfortable. "So, Mom," Claire started, "we've been doing a lot of thinking, and we know all these changes have been a little stressful. But you've been such a trooper," Rick chimed in, flashing his salesman's smile, "and we are just so excited for your next chapter." He slid the folder across the glass. It was glossy. The cover photo was of two silver-haired people who looked like they'd never seen a moment of hardship, laughing over a game of bingo. The logo at the top read, "Sunset Hills, a 5-star senior community." "We took a tour yesterday," Claire said, her voice bubbling with fake enthusiasm. "Mom, it's amazing. It's not like those old, sad places. It's like a cruise ship. They have a pool, a movie theater, a social director. You'd love it." "5-star dining, Evelyn," Rick added, tapping the brochure. 3 meals a day, and you don't have to lift a finger. No more cooking, no more cleaning, no more worrying about taxes or the roof or anything. It's all inclusive." I opened the brochure. Beige. Everything was beige. The carpets, the walls, the polite, empty smiles of the residents. It was the color of giving up. I turned a page and saw a sample activity schedule. 10 a.m., water aerobics. 2 p.m., bingo. 4 p.m., social hour, non-alcoholic. This was it. This was the phase 3 from their slide deck. The consultation was complete. Now they just needed to transition E. Franklin. I looked up at them, and I assembled my face into a mask of confused, watery-eyed gratitude. Oh my. You did all this? For me?" "Of course we did," Claire said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. Her skin was smooth, her nails perfectly manicured. "We just want you to be safe, and happy, and taken care of. It's time for you to finally relax." There was that word again. Relax. The word you use before you put an old dog to sleep. "It's just," I let my voice tremble. It happened so fast." "That's the best part," Rick said, his voice all business now. He pulled a single sheet of paper from the folder. It was a crisp, official-looking form. He slid it over to me, right next to an expensive, heavy-looking pen. "This is just the application. Standard stuff. The wait list at these places is long, so we have to act fast. We just need your signature here and here, so we can get you on the list. It's just a formality." I looked at the paper. It wasn't just an application. My eyes, even at 68, are still sharp. I may be a hobbyist, but I read my own contracts for 30 years. I saw the title at the top, Application for Residency and Medical Proxy Agreement. They weren't just getting me on a wait list. They were getting my signature to take over my medical decisions. This was the higher level of care clause from the quitclaim deed. This was the final lock on the cage. This was the undeniable step Ben Diaz had been waiting for. They were both watching me, leaning in. Their faces were masks of loving, concerned children. They were so close. They were so sure they had won. I picked up the pen. It was heavy in my hand. I stared at the signature line. It's just so much," I whispered, looking from Claire to Rick, my eyes wide and shining with unshed tears. My whole house, just to sign it all away. "It's not signing it away, Mom," Claire said, her voice losing a little of its patience. "It's an upgrade. It's for you. Just sign the form." The pen hovered over the paper. The point was just a millimeter above the line. This was it. The peak. The top of the roller coaster, right before the fall. I looked at my daughter. My child. The one I'd taken that second mortgage for. She was smiling, eager, waiting for me to sign my own eviction. I smiled back. You know, dear, I think you're right. It is time. It is time, I said, my smile unwavering. The pen was still in my hand, an inch from their phony application. But I don't think this is phase 3. Claire's answering smile faltered, her head tilted, like a confused bird. What? Mom? What are you talking about? Rick's eyes narrowed. His salesman's charm evaporated, revealing the cold, impatient man beneath. Evelyn, just sign the damn paper. We don't have time for your games. Oh, this isn't my game, Rick, I said. I set the heavy, expensive pen down on the glass table. It made a small, sharp clink. This is your game. Project Takedown. Legacy asset restructure. I just believe you've miscalculated. You're not on phase 3. I believe we're on to phase 4. Their faces. I will never, as long as I live, forget their faces. It wasn't just confusion. It was a cold, dawning animal in a trap panic. The blood literally drained from Claire's face, leaving her a blotchy, pale white. Rick's mouth opened, but no sound came out. That's my cue, a voice said from the hallway. Claire shrieked. Rick jumped to his feet, knocking his hardback chair over with a crash. Ben Diaz walked into the dining room. My junkyard dog. He wasn't in his church basement clothes. He was in a sharp, dark suit and a blood-red tie. He looked like he ate salesmen like Rick for breakfast. Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling. Miss Sterling. Ben smiled, that cold, sharp smile. I'm Benjamin Diaz. I'm Mrs. Franklin's attorney. Get out of my house. Rick finally found his voice. It was a little too high. I'm afraid you're confused about that, too, Ben said, his voice calm and lethal. He was holding a stack of papers so thick it looked like a phone book. He walked to the glass table and, with a deliberate, almost casual motion, he dropped it. The thud of the lawsuit hitting the glass echoed in the beige, empty room. It sounded like a gunshot. You've been served, Ben said, pushing the stack toward them. That's a civil complaint for starters. Fraud, fraudulent inducement, breach of fiduciary duty, and, my personal favorite, intentional infliction of emotional distress. This is insane, Rick was sputtering. You have no proof. This is slander. Am I asked. My voice was mine again. It was clear, and it was cold. We have the Project Takedown slide deck, Mr. Sterling, Ben said, ticking points off on his fingers. The one where you outline your plan to liquidate this property for $1.2 million. We have the fraudulent quitclaim deed you had your own mother sign under the false pretense of it being a legacy agreement. Rick's face went from white to a strange, mottled purple. That's privileged. You stole that. That's illegal. No, Ben said, his smile widening. What's illegal is what I have right here. He tapped his breast pocket, where my old iPhone was safely tucked. This is a 12-minute and 40-second digital recording made just 3 days ago in this very room. A recording where you and your wife confirm, in your own excited voices, your plan to move Mrs. Franklin to the Sunset Hills facility, the one out by the Costco. All so you could sell her home, the one you just admitted you planned to sell. Without her consent, you called her. What was it? A country bumpkin vibe that was holding you back. Claire made a sound. A small, choking, dying animal sound. She wasn't looking at Ben. She was staring at me. Her face was a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. You recorded us, she whispered. You called me junk, dear, I said, my voice soft. You told me to go weed the garden, so I did, and I listened. You'd be amazed what you can hear when people think you're just a silly old woman. And here's the best part, Ben continued, stepping forward. Just 20 minutes ago, we filed a lis pendens against this property. Rick's bluster vanished. He knew that word. A what? Claire asked, her eyes darting between us. It means, I translated, that the house is frozen. You can't sell it. You can't borrow another dime against it. You can't so much as demo another farmhouse cabinet. This asset, it's no longer liquid. Rick pointed a shaking finger at Ben. I'll have you disbarred. I'll sue you! I'll sue her! This is a criminal investigation, Ben offered. Because that's phase 5. I had a fascinating chat with the district attorney's elder fraud unit this morning. They were riveted by your Project Takedown presentation, especially the part about Sunset Hills. They're very, very interested in phase 3. That was the word that broke them. Criminal. Rick sank back into his chair. He was small. His expensive suit suddenly looked cheap and baggy. Claire just stared at me. All the beige branding, all the influencer poise. It was gone. She was just the one 5-year-old girl in the bank lobby again, angry and selfish and completely, totally baffled that the world wasn't rearranging itself to her will. How could you? She breathed. I'm your daughter. And I'm your mother, I said. I stood up. The uncomfortable chair scraped against the floor. I looked down at the glossy, beige, Sunset Hills brochure. I picked it up, along with the medical proxy agreement, and I tore them both in half, right down the middle, through the smiling, bingo-playing seniors. I dropped the pieces on top of the lawsuit. I won't be signing this today, I said, or ever. You wanted my legacy? You wanted to restructure my life. I looked around the cold, sterile room they had made. You can keep the beige, I said. I'll be taking my house back. And Ben? Make sure we get my maple table out of the garage. It's not junk, it's evidence. That old maple table was evidence. It was the physical proof of my 30 years of labor, and Ben Diaz made sure it was the first thing the forensic accountants inventoried. What came next wasn't a dramatic courtroom battle. I was prepared for one. I was ready to get on the stand and tell my story. But Ben's lawsuit was so airtight, the Project Takedown slide deck so damning, and the voice memo so final that it never got that far. It was, as Ben called it, a forced liquidation. The first domino to fall was the $1 million vision. The venture capital guys didn't just walk, they ran. I imagine Rick's phone must have been melting. I later saw a forwarded email from Ben. The subject line, in all caps, was Notice of Immediate Withdrawal, BRP. The investors' lawyers used words like gross misrepresentation and fraudulent non-disclosure. It turns out, legacy founders you plan to dump in a nursing home aren't just roadblocks. They're material facts you're legally required to mention. While Rick's global strategy was imploding, Claire's brand was evaporating. The influencer partners she'd been courting wanted nothing to do with a story about elder fraud. Her meticulously curated beige Instagram feed went silent. The catering company, the contractors, the turtleneck photographer, they all wanted to be paid. And since Rick's assets were frozen, the bills, all addressed to Claire Sterling, CEO, started piling up on the glass and chrome table. One morning, I was drinking my coffee in the laundry room when I saw it. A big, neon green tow truck was backing up Rick's driveway. He came running out of the house, still in his silk pajamas, waving his arms and screaming. But the man with the clipboard just shook his head, hooked up Rick's shiny new black sports car, and dragged it down the street, its back wheels protesting. They couldn't afford the payments. They couldn't afford anything. The final meeting was 2 weeks later. Ben arranged it. He insisted it be held at the house. He also insisted the movers bring my old maple preserving table back from the garage. When Claire and Rick walked in, it was the only piece of furniture in the dining room. It sat in the middle of that cold, grayish space, its scarred, stained, purple and brown wood looking more honest and real than anything else in the room. They didn't look like influencers or visionaries anymore. They looked cheap. Rick's suit was wrinkled, and he hadn't shaved. Claire looked hollow. Her perfect hair was pulled back in a stringy ponytail, and she wasn't wearing any makeup. She was just a pale, angry girl who'd been caught. Ben sat at the head of the table. I sat at the other. They were forced to sit in the middle, on 2 metal folding chairs Ben had brought from his office. Ben didn't waste time. He laid out a new stack of papers on the old wood. "It's very simple," he said, his voice echoing in the empty room. "This is a full and final settlement. You will sign over your shares of the LLC. You will sign a new quitclaim deed, returning this house and this property to its sole rightful owner, Evelyn Franklin. You will sign a check from your now liquidated new venture account for $250,000 as payment for damages, legal fees, and the cost of restoring this home." Rick started to speak. "This is extortion." "No," Ben cut him off, his voice like ice. Extortion is what you did. This is a deal. Because in exchange for signing everything, the D.A.S. office has agreed to file your criminal case under deferred prosecution. You avoid jail. You get probation. He leaned in. You get to walk away. That is a gift, and it's the last one you're getting. Rick looked at me, his eyes full of pure, unadulterated hatred. He thought I was the one who'd ruined him. He still didn't get it. He'd ruined himself. He snatched the pen and scribbled his name. Then, Ben pushed the papers toward Claire. She didn't move. She just stared at the scarred wood of the table. Maybe she was finally seeing it, seeing the homework, the spilled jam, the 30 years of work. "Claire," I said, my voice quiet. She looked up at me. Her eyes were dead. "You ruined my life," she whispered. "No, honey," I said. "You ruined your brand. I'm just keeping my legacy." She signed. They stood up. They didn't have a new sports car to drive away in. They left in Claire's 10-year-old Honda Civic, the one I'd bought her for college graduation. They were left with nothing but their car payments, their student loans, and each other. The front door closed. I was alone in my big, empty, beige house. The liquidation was complete. They had been restructured right out of my life. I walked over to my old maple table. I ran my hand over the deep, familiar knife mark. It was time to buy some paint, and I knew exactly what color I was going to get. It wasn't just one. I went to the hardware store and came back with 3 cans, buttery yellow for the living room, farmhouse white for the trim, and a deep, beautiful cherry wood stain for the new cabinets, an exact match for the ones they'd thrown in the dumpster. It took 6 months. 6 months of drywallers, painters, and plumbers. 6 months of sawdust and the smell of fresh paint. I paid for all of it with the damages check Ben Diaz had gotten me. I called it my reinvestment. When it was done, my house was my house again. More importantly, my kitchen was my kitchen. The stainless steel morgue counters were gone, sold for scrap. In their place, I'd hired a local carpenter to build me a new butcher block island. And in the very center, right under the new lights, sat my old maple preserving table. I'd sanded it down myself, just a little, enough to smooth the worst of the demo crew's scratches, but I left the old stains. I left the knife marks. I left the story. I'd learned something from all this. A legacy isn't something you give to entitled hands. It's something you share with willing ones. So, every Tuesday and Thursday, I host a class. The Blue Ridge Pantry Workshop. I don't charge much. I teach local kids, high schoolers, a few new moms, anyone who wants to learn. I don't teach branding, or synergy, or leveraging assets. I teach them how to work. I teach them how to tell when a strawberry is perfectly ripe just by the smell, how to sterilize a jar so it pings just right, how to skim the foam off a batch of boiling jam, a skill that requires patience, a steady hand, and the willingness to stand over a hot stove for an hour. I teach them what I'd failed to teach my own daughter, that the value isn't in the logo, it's in the labor. It was on one of these Tuesdays. The kitchen was full. It smelled like peaches and cardamom. Steam fogged up the windows. I had 4 teenagers, their faces flushed, all fumbling with hot jar lids. I was showing a young woman named Maria how to test the set of the jam on a frozen spoon. And then, the screen door squeaked. The class didn't notice, but I did. I looked up. My heart didn't pound. It just stopped. It was Claire. But it wasn't Claire. Not the CEO in the white linen dress. Not the influencer with the perfect, beige-filtered life. This was a woman I barely recognized. Her hair was lank and greasy, pulled back in a rubber band. She was wearing old sweatpants and a stained t-shirt. Her eyes were puffy and red-rimmed. She was standing on my porch, her hands shoved in her pockets, looking in like a ghost at a feast. I put the spoon down. "Keep stirring," I told Maria. "Don't let it scorch the bottom." I wiped my hands on my apron, my real apron, the one stained with 30 years of blackberry and plum, and I stepped outside. The humid summer air felt thick. She wouldn't look at me. She just stared at the worn-out welcome mat. "Hi, Mom." Her voice was a cracked whisper. "Claire, I didn't say it with anger. I didn't say it with love. I just said it. It was a fact. Like the weather." "It smells good," she whispered. "Peach cardamom," I said. "It was always your favorite." She flinched. Just a little. She remembered. "He left me," she said. The words came out in a flat, dead rush, as if she'd practiced them. Rick, he's gone. He blames me for all of it, for losing the investors, for the lawsuit, he said. He said I was the one who was supposed to handle you. She laughed, a small, bitter, ugly sound. He took the last of the money from the settlement, what was left after paying Ben Diaz, and he's gone. Arizona, I think. I've been living in my car for a week. She finally looked up at me. Her eyes were completely empty. The fire, the arrogance, the vision, it was all gone. She was just hollow. Mom! I have nothing. There it was. The phase 3 she had planned for me, delivered right back to her. I looked at my daughter. My child. The one I'd signed that mortgage for. The one who had planned, in meticulous detail, to put me in Sunset Hills. The one who had called my life's work junk and told me to go play bingo. A part of me, that old, soft, hobbyist part that died in the beige dining room, wanted to pull her inside. It wanted to hold her, to tell her it would be okay, to make her a cup of tea and a piece of toast. But that woman was gone. She'd been restructured. You're right, I said. My voice was quiet, but it didn't tremble. You have nothing. You built your life on a lie, Claire. You thought you could just take 30 years of my work, put a beige sticker on it, and call it yours. It was never yours. You never earned it. Mom, please, she whispered. The tears started to well up, real ones this time. I'm so sorry. I have nowhere to go. Please, help me. I can't. She recoiled, as if I'd slapped her. I can't help you, I clarified, my voice hard as steel. I already did that. I helped you your whole life. I helped you with college. I helped you by giving you my business. Giving you help is what got us here. Help is what you thought you were entitled to. I turned, went back into the kitchen, the screen door slamming shut behind me. I heard a small, choked sob from the porch. I ignored it. I walked past the teenagers, who were now carefully pouring the hot jam into the jars. I went to the hook by the door and took down a clean, white apron. I went back outside. She was crumpled on the top step, her face in her hands. I held out the apron. She looked up, her eyes blurred and confused. I can't give you a handout, I said, my voice firm, but I can offer you a job. My 2 p.m. class canceled. I'm behind on a big order for the farmer's market, and I need someone to wash and hull about 50 pounds of strawberries. It pays minimum wage. In cash. You can start right now. She just stared at the apron. She was looking for her mother. The soft one. The roadblock. She found a boss. You want me to work, she whispered, like the word was in a foreign language. That's how it's done, Claire, I said. That's how you build something real. You don't start at phase 3. You start here. You start at the beginning. You wash the fruit. She looked at her 10-year-old Civic parked on the street. She looked at the long, empty road. She looked at her soft, clean, manicured hands. And then, slowly, with shaking fingers, she stood up. She took the apron from me. She didn't cry. She just tied it around her waist. The utility sink is in the laundry room, I said. My voice all business. Use cold water. And don't bruise the berries. They're expensive. I need them ready in 2 hours. I turned and walked back into my kitchen, back to my class, back to the sweet, hot smell of peaches and cardamom. I didn't look back to see if she was following. I didn't have to. A minute later, I heard the water in the laundry room, the one she had exiled me to turn on. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't redemption. It was just consequences. She hadn't just lost her brand. She had lost her mother. But today, she'd found a job. It was a start. It was the only start I had to offer. It was a start. It was the only start I had to offer. I turned away from the sound of the water running in the laundry room and went back to my class. I had work to do. The next day, I drove into town and used some of my damages money to order a new sign. Not a beige one, not a modern one. I had it hand-carved from a solid piece of oak by a local woman who understood what the words meant. This morning, I hung it on the front gate myself. It's heavy. The letters are carved deep and painted in that same rich Blue Ridge blue. It says, Blue Ridge Pantry, Est 1995, under new old management. I'm sitting at my old maple table now, in my kitchen. The room is warm, and it smells like peach cardamom. I'm sipping my morning tea from a real ceramic mug. From here, I can see out the window, past the garden, to the gate where my new sign hangs. My daughter thought my kindness was weakness. She mistook my love for a lack of intelligence. She forgot I'm the one who survived the bad seasons, paid the mortgages, and built this brand from a $10 garage sale table. She and Rick didn't just try to steal a house. They tried to steal a legacy. But a legacy that's built on 30 years of hard work, calloused hands, and sleepless nights. Well, that's one asset you can't just liquidate. So let me ask you, what's a legacy, big or small, that you would fight to protect? If this story resonated with you, let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in the hardest of times.